how to create an abstract design using the Twirl filter as a source. Something like that. Obviously, there's a bit more than Twirl. There's also a deform and a few layers in between. So I'm going to be using a selection, elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to fill that with a gradient. I'm going to put it on a layer. So layer menu and new layer. So you've got view, studio and layers. And also swatch is quite useful because what I've done, I've built up quite a collection of gradients. Affinity Photo doesn't come with many gradients. So just quickly create that selection, but it's really quite useful to have some gradients stored away in swatches. But you can always create your own gradient swatches. So I've just added, using the gradient tool, I'm going to use elliptical. Not that it matters particularly changing that, but you can always create your own gradients just by clicking on the gradient at the top. But you can also just select a gradient from your swatches in the gradient section. And you can see it's made up of lots of different stops, and you can create your own very quickly and recolor it in all kinds of ways. I think this works best if you create something like that. I'm just clicking on the gradient there, and you can see the gradient and you can just add your own stops. Sadly, you can't expand that panel out, which would make it easier to add more stops than 10 or 15 or so stops there. I'm not certain if there's a limit. Anyway, so I've got a fairly complex gradient there. And I could, of course, make an even more complex gradient if I applied the gradient multiple times. But I don't want to do that. I'm just going to go with that. And then I'm going to go to Filters menu, Distort, and I'm going to Twirl. And you can change, obviously, the angle. You can make a quite reasonable spiral design just by doing this within a selection. And apply it. And of course, as with any filter, you can apply it multiple times. I think it always works best. Apply it 5, 10 times. Just repeat it. All within that selection. So you can build up quite a really nice spiral design there. That's a destructive effect. Obviously, you can always undo if you want to go back. So at some point, just stop. You don't have to do it. Obviously, at some point, it will just become so thin. What I want to do is select and deselect because I don't want selection anymore. But it's on a layer. So what you can do with a layer, you can always just hold down the Alt or Option key and drag to duplicate the design using the Move tool. And you can make multiple copies and you can fill the entire screen, entire image with this design. Well, that actually makes quite an interesting background design on its own. Of course, what you can also do, you can resize the design. You can use the bounding box, just resize them. Don't have to keep them all the same. You could, of course, also manipulate the colors if you wish, using the adjustments. But I'm just going to go with that, and I'm going to resize them, a few of them, just to create a few some variations there. But you don't need to. Just create a lot of these designs and fill the entire screen with this very intense twirl or spiral. And once you've done that, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to combine them all into a single layer. And the easiest way to do that is go to the layer menu and merge visible. So you can see all the layers over there. You just go over to the layer menu and merge visible. Not merge down, merge visible. Often do merge down by accident, but merge visible is the one I want. And I can just delete all those. Don't want them anymore. You could keep them, of course. Just delete them in the bottom right corner. So I've got this design. Now I can use that, of course. But before I do anything else, I'm going to go to the layer menu and I'm going to duplicate it. But I could also quickly show you live projections. This creates quite a nice design as well. but I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to show an example, but you can create some really beautiful, unusual designs by using that live projection. But I'm not going to approach it using that. I'm going to use the deform. So I'm going to undo. But I'm going to use 2 layers. And you all to actually work with it, you could just rasterize it if you want to work with that. But I'm not. I'm just going to go with layer menu and duplicate. That was a slight sidestep off something else. So I've got 2 layers now of that spiral design. What you can do, you can go to filters and distort and deform. And I can distort it. Now I'm distorting top layer. Personally, I always prefer the linear constraint. I'm just going to go with similarity. I must admit, whenever I go into deform, I normally end up putting it to that. I prefer it. Just looks better. The result looks better. So I'm just distorting that top layer. And once you're happy with the design, what you can then do is click apply. It's a quite nice distorted design. And you might think, well, that's it. That's what I want for my design. Just use it. Don't have to do the next couple of steps. So apply that. Now I'm going to work on the lower layer as well. Obviously I've got one above, so I'm just going to make it not visible for a bit. So I'm going to go and do exactly the same. Filters menu and distort and deform. Well, not exactly the same. Obviously it'd be no use if I distorted it exactly the same way. And it would be a miracle if I could distort it in exactly the same way. But I'm going to go similarity. And I'm going to distort that. Again, it's a bit like that projection that I just showed earlier. It sort of distorts it out. But I think this creates a very, very interesting sort of distortion. I really like this feature. It's one of those features that you think, why isn't it in lots of applications? Probably not Microsoft Word. Wouldn't be useful. So once you've got that, now, of course, this is the background layer. And I can obviously continue to distort it forever and ever. And again, that you might think, well, that's the design I want. I'm going to keep just that. And that'd be fine as well. Remember to click apply. Now, of course, where you've got 2 layers. I'm going to bring the other layer back in again. So it's visible again. And now, of course, I can just use blending modes. Go to the top entry and then just run through the blending modes. I quite like the screen one or lighten. Creates really beautiful design. You can see all the weaving out there, in and out of the design. And of course, once you've got that, and I've just used lighten, you could of course use any of the other blending modes. I can merge visible. And again, I can remove the existing, those ones, the lower down layers, just delete them. Or just make them not visible. Up to you. So you can see the design there. Of course, you could end at that point, perfectly reasonable. But what you can also do, of course, is you can deform that. And of course, you could use live projection as well on that. So you go layer menu, live projection, and that rectangular one. And you can see you can create some very interesting views. Again, if you want to rasterize it, so you remove the projection, just go to layer menu and rasterize. So you can see you can use that. And now you could, of course, duplicate the layer beforehand and then do the projection and blend those as well. Create some very, I say, rasterize there. No, I'm not going to stick with that, but I just want to show you live projection is a really cool feature that you can use. So you can just go back to the earlier state before live projection there. But you can also go to filters and distort and deform. And deform that design to create even more weird and wonderful landscapes. very surreal twirl design. Of course, like I say, I go with the similarity, prefer that. And you can just distort the design again. Now you can push it too far and you'll notice that it will start to degrade. But you can create some really beautiful designs by using this approach, just with a very basic, quite intense, and it really works best, I think, if you've got a really intense design. And then you can, of course, like I say, distort it in numerous ways. And you could do exactly the same as I did before. I could actually have duplicated this layer and then created 2 deforms and then used lighten to blend that as well, and then merge those. So you can create all kinds of weird and wonderful designs. Always remember to click apply. Sometimes I don't, always forget and go off doing something else. I think, oh, strange. So apply, and there you have it. A beautiful twirled and deformed design. Of course, you could do exactly as before. You could duplicate layers, use deform again on that, then blend that, rasterize and all those sorts of things, use live projections and many more ways of modifying it. Hope you found this of interest. Please subscribe to the Graphicxtras channel. Always adding new tutorials about Photoshop, Affinity Photo, etc. Please add some comments. Always appreciated. Dislike or like. Thank you much.